Act 1. Autistic Traits. Autism often presents differently in females versus males.
Some of the earliest signs that I displayed and that could have been noticed were my sensory issues mainly, and like they mainly had to do with touch. So a lot of fabrics annoyed me a lot, especially underwear, socks, pajamas, and that was kind of a struggle. Another thing that was very evident, like as soon as I went to school, was my executive dysfunction and my issues with concentration and planning and sticking to a routine. And also my social issues that became apparent when I was, I guess, a toddler, like when I started socializing with other kids in kindergarten or in the park, because I wasn't really socializing with them. I was kind of afraid of them. I only had one friend for a few years. I think there are two main reasons why that happens. The first being medical bias. I mean, since early on, since the first autism studies, the focus was always on young boys, and so I guess women just haven't been studied enough for professionals to recognize how autism manifests in them. But the second one has to do with how women are socialized. We're expected, we're held to a higher standard, right? We've all heard people say that girls just mature faster. And so we expect girls to be quiet, and we expect girls to have a better behavior, and sometimes we just kind of like let boys express themselves more freely, and including their disruptive behaviors. And so in girls, I think girls just learn to mask autism way better and way earlier. And I preferred hanging out with my mom and her friend, her adult friend, when we were at the park. And I would usually only go and play with the other kids after my mom and her friend had thoroughly encouraged me to do so. And the last one, I guess, would be my very intense empathy. I was very, very sensitive as a child, and displayed empathy even for inanimate objects.
Women are often able to mask their autism and blend in better with society.
I don't think people understand masking is not the customary social performances everyone puts on in order to survive. It is not making minor tweaks to your personality. It is fundamentally altering it. It is learning against your will to hide your entire being, every behavior that feels good and natural to you. It is having to be hyper aware of your every motion, from the way you swing your arms when you walk to the way you move your mouth. It is having to constantly microanalyze your own behavior due to years of abuse and neglect, due to something entirely out of your own control. And above all else, it is all these things, it is doing all these things and still not being enough, throwing yourself away and still being abandoned. And for so many, it symbolizes such a slow, painful loss of identity that I can't stand when people dismiss it as something that everybody does, because for many, it is so much more than that.
My diagnostic journey began in May 2020, initially with an accidental self-discovery and self-diagnosis, but then I reached out to certain professionals, and the official diagnostic process, like in a public hospital, looked like this. At first, I was referred to this psychiatrist by a psychologist, and the psychiatrist had a 1-hour session with me and my mom, just asking us questions. We all filled, by all I mean me and my parents, filled questionnaires, and then I had an IQ test in the same hospital, and then a final assessment with the initial psychiatrist. But after that, because she said that I didn't have autism, we followed that up with some more sessions with a couple of other professionals, and those sessions were not as structured. They were a bit more laid back, more just talking to them.
A lot of the diagnostic tools and information used to diagnose autism are centered around little boys. So if you're anything outside of that profile, you'll probably get misdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all.
I want you to think really hard before you go to get an autism diagnosis. I just came home and hyperventilated and screamed and ate my feelings and just felt like my identity was gone. So my psychologist says that I'm too intelligent and too good at socializing to be autistic. Basically, because I work as an accountant, there's no way that I could be autistic. So even though I gave him pages upon pages of details of my life and examples of why I think I'm autistic. None of that matters, just because I'm too good at socializing. So instead, he diagnosed me with avoidant personality disorder.
Act 2. Societal Problems. Society so often tries to invalidate autistic individuals, especially women, due to the myth that you can't be autistic if you're a woman. They'll say things like, "You don't look autistic," or "You're just a woman, so you can't possibly be autistic."
You are not autistic. It is all in your head. Where else would the autism be? It is in my head. That is correct. I don't know what you're saying.
But you don't look gay. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me just...
It's very invalidating, especially for someone who is just recently diagnosed and doesn't know how to deal with the backlash.
So far, I've only talked about my diagnosis to, people that I already know are pretty open-minded and that genuinely care about me. But with that being said, I also have a page on Instagram where I talk about autism. So that's not as controlled of an environment, but I have not seen anybody outright tell me that I'm not autistic or that they think I'm lying, but I've seen a lot of surprise from people, like almost disbelief, I'd say, when I tell them. And I've definitely seen people be a bit condescending, especially like in my page, that they come on my page and I guess try to invalidate my opinions on autism. So I've definitely experienced that, and I feel like neurotypical doctors, for example, or educators who speak on autism don't get questioned and invalidated as much as autistic people who talk about their own experiences.
The diagnosis feels like a threat everywhere you go. You can't tell your work, or else you risk being treated differently or not getting a promotion. You receive no accommodations, and overall, it can be stressful and draining. Act 3. Seeking a diagnosis. Seeking a diagnosis as a woman can be hard, but I want you to know there is a whole community of autistic women out there for you, and I must admit, they're pretty great. But don't just take it from me. Hear what other autistic females have to say.
I think if someone thinks they're autistic, first of all, trust your instinct. If you feel like something about you is just very different, and you feel like you relate to the experiences of autistic people, yeah, there's a good chance that it might be autism, or in other cases, maybe ADHD, or something else, like dyspraxia, for example. But the point is, if you can access, like an official diagnosis, because, not everybody can do that, but if you can, please don't just go to one doctor. Get a couple of different opinions, because a lot of people claim to be experts but are not, especially if you're an adult or if you're a woman. You probably are gonna need a few more different opinions. And please understand that autism is not a curse. It's an explanation of your behavior and experience, and it can lead to improved mental health, like being diagnosed, and it can lead to friends and community, and that's beautiful.